Welcome back to another project. In this project, we are going to create a weather app. As you can see from the final version of the project, we have an input and a button saying get weather. If you write down a name of the city that we want to check the weather, for example, I write down London. When we click on the get weather or press enter, we are going to get the data related to this city, including the icon related to the, for example, the forecast of the weather, which can be cloudy, sunny, or etc. We get the temperature, and we also get the description, overcast clouds, in particular for the London, and then we get some other data like the temperature for feels like, humidity, speed, and the wind speed. For example, we can test for another city like Sydney. So as you can see, the city's temperature is 25 degrees Celsius. And also the other things I've added to this project is the error handling. For example, if you write down a city that is not existed, for example, you make a spelling mistake and click the get weather, you get an error saying an error happened, please try again later. So we're gonna use JavaScript to first fetch data from an open weather API to get the data related to the cities, and then we're going to check if the data is okay. We're going to show it, otherwise we're going to pass an error saying that an error occurred. So we're going to learn how to try and catch and fetch data and catch the error. In the next section, we're going to start working on the project's HTML file. So see you in the next section. All right, let's start our project. I have put the final version here for our comparison. As you can see, we have a weather app with the input for the city and the button here. The first things we need to do to create this application in this section is to create an HTML file. So we need to go and open the Visual Studio Code. This is my favorite text editor, but you are free to use any text editor you are familiar with. And here we click on the file to create a new folder. I would like to create the project in my desktop, so I'm gonna click on desktop here. I create a new folder and I call it weather app, which is the name of our application. So weather-app, we press enter, and here we can click on the select folder to select the folder. This is going to create open a new Visual Studio Code. Let me close the extra one here. So this is now our project is in this folder, weather-app. Then now it's completely empty, but we can start creating our HTML file by clicking on this icon to create a new file, or you can right click and click on new file to create a new file, and we call it index.html. And here we can close the welcome tab as well. We have the HTML file now, but it is completely empty, but we can use an exclamation mark like this to get a boilerplate suggestion from Emmet abbreviations. As you can see, we are getting this suggestion by just clicking on the exclamation mark. So as you can see, now we have the boilerplate, which includes the doc type at the top, which actually tells the browser which version of HTML the code is written in. For example, if you want to, because we are using HTML5, we just need to leave HTML here inside the tag. Then everything else is covered by an HTML tag. And here the lang attribute defines the language of the page. And as we are using English, we're going to keep it EN, but you can change it based on your local language and the language that you're going to use inside your website. Inside the HTML tag, we have two tags, which includes the head tag and the body tag. The head tag contains the metadata and the title. The first metadata tag is for the chart set attribute, which sets the characteristics of the website. UTF-8 is recommended by HTML file because it nearly contains all the characters and symbols. So the users that are using our website won't have any problem seeing the symbols and characters in our website because this one nearly contains all of them. Then we have an compatibility metadata tag, which is for users who are still using Internet Explorer. So this is going to tell the browser to use the recent rendering engine for the Microsoft Edge for the Internet Explorer browsers. And the next metadata tag is a viewport metadata tag, which sets the width of the screen to be the device's width. For example, if you're looking at the website by your mobile, you're going to see a different width in the website while you're using a different device like a desktop, laptop, or tablet. And here we see the initial scale level, which is the initial zoom level of the browser, and it is set to be 100%. You can change it, for example, to 80% or anything you prefer. And here we see the title of the page, which is going to be appeared on the top of the tab section of the browser, so which is set to be document. So let's see this one inside the browser. So we can use the extension live server. If you haven't installed it, I highly recommend you install this extension live server. When you have this one, you see a go live under here inside your Visual Studio Code. If you press on that, this is going to automatically open this page inside the browser, and it is going to refresh this page based on the changes you do inside your application. And you need to actually activate the autosave in your Visual Studio to see the changes after you do your changes in your coding and see it here. As you can see, the title is document now. We can change this one by changing this title. I'm going to change it to the name of our project, which is Weather App. And now if you check the title, it is changed to Weather App. So let's bring this one, our website, to the right side. And before doing that, I'm going to show you what we are going to do here inside the final version. So we're going to have a container here. Let me search for something. For example, I search for London. I press get weather. It is shown the result here. I'm going to show you and break it down. So we have a container. So let me change the color. You can see it better. So we have a div with a class of container that is covering everything inside our application. Then we have a title, an h1 tag here at the top. Then we have a form, which includes two inputs here. One is the London, the input here, and also we have a button. So, and this is a form. And after that, we have a div, another div. There is another div here, which is covering the icon. So let me show you here. So this is the icon section. Then we have the temperature, and then we have the description. And finally, we have another div for the details, which includes the different details like what feels like, humidity, and wind speed. So we're gonna exactly structure our HTML file based on these divs. So we have a div with a class of container here, and then we have the title form, and then we have another div which includes 4 other divs, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the last one is going to have 3 more divs inside it. So let's start doing that. Let's bring our website to the right side so we can see the changes in real time. Let's bring the Visual Studio Code on the left side so we can see everything. And we close this section. We don't need it for now. So inside the body section, we're going to, if whatever we add inside the body section, we're going to see inside the browser. So I'm going to add a div with a class of container. We just need to write dot, and we just write down container. And this is going to suggest some abbreviation as well, which is a div with a class of container. And here inside this div, we're going to have an h1 tag saying weather app. Okay, now you see the changes here. And then we're going to have a form So we just write a form. We don't need an action for the form. And for the form, we're going to have two inputs, one with the type of text and one with the type of submit. Because when we want to click on this button, get weather, we want to submit the form. And also we have this input with the type of text, but the inputs, it's going to be by default, when we press enter after writing down something, is going to submit the form as well. So that's why we are using input. So the first input has the type of text. So you can write down input clone text to create that one. And this is going to have an ID of city input. So for adding the ID, you can add a hashtag here or pound sign, and you just write down the name of the ID you want to add. For example, city-input. So if you press enter, this is going to create an input for you with the type of text with the idea of city input. We don't need a name for that one, but we're going to have a placeholder. The placeholder is a text that is going to be shown if the input is empty. So we gotta just write down, for example, enter city. Okay, like this. So after this input, we're going to have our button. So I'm going to create an input with a class of submit, because when we press on this input, we're going to submit it. And then also we want to have some value for that one. So first we press enter, and the value for this one is going to be get weather. Okay, as you can see, this is kind of button now. We can add a button here, but for adding the functionality to the button, we need to add some event listener or something like that. But when you add an input with the type of submit, when we click on it, this is going to submit the form. As you can see, we are refreshing the page. Okay, so we have the form here. Now it's time to add the result section, the weather data. So after the form, I'm going to add another div. This time we just want to add an ID. As you can see, we are getting some suggestion here, which is coming from the extension Copilot, GitHub Copilot, but it is not free, but it gives you some suggestion. For beginners, I don't recommend you use this extension because it's better to remember the basics of the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript before using. So I'm going to deactivate this one for now, so we don't get any results from there. So I'm going to just add an ID of weather data. So you just write down a pound sign weather data, and this is going to create a div for you with the ID of weather data. And here inside this one, we're going to have the icon, we're going to have the temperature, description, and also the details. But for now, I want to add some hard-coded data. So when in the next section, when we are using CSS, we can simply style our projects, but we're going to delete them when we are using JavaScript, because we want to create this data dynamically using JavaScript later. So now after that, we're going to create a div with a class of icon. So we just write down dot icon, and inside this icon, we're going to have an image. For now, the source of the image, now we're going to hard code some icon from the Open API, openweathermap.org. So the address for this one is http clone 2/openweathermap.org and /img/wn/01d, which is the image for the sun, and .png. So let's refresh the page. Let's see that if we put it correctly, openweathermap.org /image/wn, and now we can see the sun icon. And for the alternative text, we're going to have weather icon. So if the image is not going to be shown, we see this alternative text inside the text. For example, if we just make it, for example, this URL is broken, we see the weather icon instead. Okay, so we have the img here, we have the image. Now we're going to have the temperature. So I'm going to create a div with a class of temperature. And inside that, I'm going to just hard code some values, for example, 22 centigrade. So we need to add some, we just write down 22C for now. We need to add a degree as well. We can have the degree symbol. For example, you can just in Google, we search degree Celsius symbol to copy. If you search on the Google, you can just copy it from here, and then you can just paste it here. Okay, if you don't have it inside, you cannot find it. Okay, so we have the 2 degrees centigrade hard coded. As I mentioned before, we're going to get these data dynamically using JavaScript and Open API website. So after this div, you're going to have another div for the description. So I'm going to just add description here. And for the for having something inside, we just write down sunny for now. After that, we're going to have another div for the details. So the class for this one is going to say details. And finally, inside this div, we're going to have 3 more divs. We just write there, we don't need a class for this one. And then the first one is just say fields like, we can just say copy this one. This is going to be, for example, 23. And let's add another div, which is going to say humidity equals 40%. And the last one is going to be another div just saying wind speed. And this is going to be, for example, 5 meters per second. So we have hard-coded some data here. You can see if I zoom it a little bit. Now we have completed the HTML part of the project. So we can use these hard-coded data. So in the next section, we can just style our projects like the final version using CSS. So see you in the next section for the CSS part of the project. All right, in the last section, we have completed the HTML part of the project. In this section, we're going to solve the project using CSS, and we make it similar to the final version with the container, with the box shadow. We're going to design this input and the button, and also we make it similar to this, which is a modern design. The first things we need to do is to create a CSS file inside the Visual Studio Code. I'm going to open the Explorer section using Ctrl-Shift-E, or you can just go to View and open the Explorer section, Ctrl-Shift-E. And here we can create a new file, and we just call it a style.css. So this is a folder. Sorry, let's delete this. We need to create a file. So we just call it style.css. As you can see, it is completely empty. But first, before using the CSS, you need to add a link to the CSS file within the HTML file. So we need to come back to index.html, and inside the head tag, just after the title, you can add a link tag. You just write down link, and you can click on the third auto suggestion, the one with the CSS, which is going to create a relationship between the HTML file and the style sheet, which is the style.css. And here the destination of the file, the address href, is style.css, because both files are located at the same directory. So we just say style.css. So now we can use the style.css in our project. So the first things I usually do is to start styling the body section of the project. I'm gonna create some background color, we're gonna change the margin and also the font family. So we just need to target the body section. We just say body. We add a set of curly braces. The first things we need to do is to remove the default margin, which is gonna help us to easily achieve our styling. So I'm gonna set the margin to 0, and this is going to reset the default margin for us. And then we can use some fonts for our alt text inside the website. The font I want to use is called Mont Serif. So we just write down font family, and we're gonna search for Mont Serif. If there is no in the suggestion, you can just put a string and just write down Mont Serret. And if this font is not available, so you need to have some backup font as well. So I want to use sans serif if this one is not available. So this is going to check first for the user. If it has this font, it is going to use it. Otherwise, it's going to use the second one. So now after that, I want to change the background color. I want to set a light gray background color. So we just need to have a hash or hashtag or pound sign, and we just write down F7, 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 which is a kind of a light gray color. So let's test and see our website. As you can see, the background color is not white anymore. Let's bring this one to the right side so you can see the changes in real time. Let's bring the VS Code on the left side, and let's close the Explorer section so we have more space here. So we have the background color, and we have finished styling the body section. We have removed the margin, and we don't have any space here. Without this actually margin 0, you're gonna have some space here, as you can see. Okay, so after that, we're going to style the container. Inside the HTML file, we have a div with a class of container, which is covering everything else. We're going to target that one because it is a class. We can just target that one inside CSS using dot container. So we just add a dot with the name of the container, with the name of the class. So simply we can target that div with a class of container. So let's change the background color so we can see the changes easier. So we set the white background color for this container. I'm going to use FFF, which stands for the white. As you can see now, the container has a different color here. And after that, I want to add some box shadow for that. So this is going to add some shadow effect to the container. So I'm going to just use box shadow, which has 4 parameters for us to set. 0 for the x-axis, and then we have 0 for the y-axis. And then we're going to have 20 pixels blurriness. So this is going to blur at the top and bottom. You can see the shadow, but the shadow is quite dark. I want it to be lighter. So you can just set the color using RGBA, which stands for red, green, blue, and alpha, which is going to create a color from red, green, blue, and alpha values. Alpha means the opacity. So RGBA has 4 parameters. First, we set the red, blue, and green. I think it was red, blue, and green. And then we set it to be 0, which gives us the black color. And then we just set the 0.2 for the opacity, which is 20% opacity. So you can see the nicer shadow here. We're going to have some margin at the top. Margin is a space we can add. So we're going to add some space at the top outside the container, which is going to be 50 pixels. So this is going to push it a little bit down. And we can set everything and bring everything to the center using text align center. This is going to bring everything to the center like this. I want to add some margin to the left and right as well. So we just set it margin. For the up and down, I want to set it to be 0. In a big screen, as you can see, the container is completely covered everything, but I want to have it a maximum width. So we just add a max dash width actually to set it to be 600 pixels. So this is going to have a maximum of 600 pixels, which is going to have this kind of width, but this is actually bring this one to the left side, but we want it to be in the center. What we do here is to set the margin up and down 0, but we can use auto to bring it to the center for the X and Y. So here, this is the top and bottom. This is for the left and right. So for the left and right, we make it auto margins. This is going to create some margin. And in the mobile size, we're going to just connect it to the wall. That is fine. The other things I wanted to add is some border radius, we want to add a rounded corners to the container. So we just add a border dash radius, this one. We just want to add some 5 pixels. So this is going to add some border here, the rounded corner, as you can see. Let's decrease the size again. So after that, we're going to have, so I think that's it for the container part. We don't need to do anything else. Or we can add some padding as well. So we're going to bring it more down. So we're going to add padding. Padding is going to add a space inside the container. As you can see, the text is just connected to the top. So we can just add 20 pixels for the padding, which is going to bring it exactly, push them a little bit inside. So this margin top is not working because we have a margin here. Whatever comes first comes next, actually, later has the priority. If you bring up this margin, this is going to have the margin top important. So this is going to apply this margin top as well. Otherwise, this is going to apply the next one, which is margin 0 auto. All right. So now we have the space at the top. Here you can see this is aligned very well. The next things we need to style is this form we have here. So after the container, I'm going to target the form. Because the form is just a tag, it doesn't have any class or ID. We can just simply write down form to target that. So I want to use the flex path for the layout. So we're going to change the display to flex. This is going to bring these two next to each other. So now we have this actually form. It is flex. They are next to each other, but when we have a smaller screen, we want to have it on top of each other. So we're going to have some media query to fix that one later. But for now, we just set the display to flex. We can bring everything to the center now using justify content center for bringing the children horizontally in the center. So we center the children horizontally. And also we can center the children vertically using align items center. So in the x-axis, justify content work. For the y-axis, the align items, they just bring them next to each other and center them. Because later we want to change the size of the button. So this is going to be in a different position. So we're going to center them using these two lines of code. And then I want to add some margin at the bottom of 20. This is going to add some space at the bottom of the form. So we have styled the form. Now it's time to style the inputs separately. So how we target the input, because both of the inputs have the same tag name. So if we just write down, for example, form input, we're going to target and style both of them similarly. But there is a way. As you can see, the type of this input is text. The type of the other one is submit. We can simply target these two inputs separately. We just say form, and then we're going to target the first input, which has the type of text. So we're going to write down like this. This is going to target that. This should be an equal sign. And then now whatever styling we add, this is going to be applied in the first input, which has the type of text. So now I want to add some padding, which is going to add the padding in the alt size, 10 pixels, which is going to push, as you can see now. Now, as you can see, the size of the inputs are different. For example, if you don't have the align items center, as you can see, it's different. This is going to style the other one too. So it is necessary to have this, make them align and centralize them vertically. And after the padding, we're going to remove the border of the input. We just use border 10 pixels. Sorry, we're going to remove it. So we're going to say border none. So this for most of the modern website, they don't use border, and also they don't use this outline. So when we click on it, you see a line around it. So we're going to remove that one as well using outline none too. So now when we click on it, we don't see the line around the input. After that, I want to add some border I want to add some font, actually change the font size. So I'm going to increase the size of the font using font size to 18 pixels, which is going to increase the size. And whatever we write here, it's bigger now. And we set the width of this input to be 60%. So we have completed the styling the input section with the type of text. Now we can just style the button here, which is an input with the type of submit. So we can target that one. Let's first save this one, and then we can just say form we want to target the input with the type of submit. And this is going to be, first thing first, I want to change the background color to be 0007 BFF, which is going kind of blue color. And then we set the color of the text in a white color, which is FFF. Then we can remove the border using border none. And finally, we can just add some padding, so we can add some space around the text. So in the top and bottom, I want to have 10 pixels. And for the left and right, I want to have 20 pixels. And let's add some border radius. So we add some corner, rounded corner. So we just say border dash radius. And we're going to set this one to be, for example, 5 pixels. Okay, so you can see the rounded corner here. And let's set the font size for the submit button text as well, which is going to be font dash size. So I will have to bring this one a little bit up to see the suggestion. Font size is going to be 18 pixels. So we make it bigger. We set the cursor to be pointer, which is going to change the cursor to pointer on hover. So we just, for example, we just say cursor to be pointer. When we hover over it, we see a pointing hand. And we set the outline to be none as well. So this is going to help when we click on it. This is not going to show an outline. And so that's it. But when we hover over it, I want to change the color of it. So we can easily target that one. We just say form input with the type of submit. And we're going to target the hover effect. So we're going to add a colon and just say hover. And here we can just change the background color to be different color, which is 0062 and CC. So now when we hover over it, you see a darker color, but this is a kind of fast changing. We can just add some transition here inside this form. We can just add a transition, and we're gonna have the transition to the background color with the 0.3 seconds and with the ease effect. So now when we hover over it, you see the color change is a kind of smooth, not suddenly. So that was it for this input sections, the form section. We're gonna make them actually on top of each other in the mobile size, but we're gonna do the responsiveness at the end. So just we install the other parts like this icon or other parts, and later we're going to make them responsive. So let's target this icon. If we look at the HTML file, the icon is a div with a class of icon. So we can target that one. We just say dot icon. And this is going to, I want to change the image size. So we can target the image inside. So we just say dot icon image. And this is going to, we're going to set the width to be 100 pixels. We set the height to be 100 pixels as well. We're going to set a margin. We're going to bring it to the center, but we don't need it. It's actually is inside the center. And if the icon is different, for example, it's a bit different. For example, this one is completely rounded, but some of them are different. For example, here, this is just a cloud. So we're going to add some background. For example, background size. I want to make it contain. If, for example, this one is a bit different size, this is going to zoom the level to fit it within the container. So actually this one should be inside this icon. I think that is fine, the contain. And then we just change the background repeat. This is going to prevent the repeating of the image. We just set it to be no repeat. And then we're going to change the background position to be in the center, both horizontally and vertically. So when we have a different icons, you can see the effects, but for the sun icon, we don't see the effect much. So that was it for the icon. The next one things we want to style is this temperature. So we can target that div with the class of temperature. We just say dot temperature. I think it's okay. Temperature. And we just make it bigger by changing its font size to be, for example, 48 pixels. And then we want to make it bold. So we just change the font weight to be bold. And also we can just change the margin for that one. So we add a margin, 20 pixels up and bottom, and then 0 for the left and right. I think it looks nice. Let's see the final version. Yeah, we have the similar one. And then after that, we're going to target the description, which is this sunny world. So this is going to be dot description. The things I want to do, first I want to change the font size to be, for example, 24 pixels. And let's add some margin at the bottom of 20 pixels. This one, it looks okay. And finally, we're going to have these 3 sections. First thing first, I want to install the div that is surrounding them, which is the div with a class of details. And then we're going to target the divs inside it. So first we target that one. We just say details. We want to bring them next to each other. We just say display flex. And then we want to center them like we just say justify content center to center them horizontally. And we can use align item center to center them vertically. And then we can use flex wrap. This is going to allow the children, which is these 3 divs, to wrap onto a new line if needed. For example, if there is no space here, for example, they're going to go to the next line. So this is going to make them responsive. You cannot see it yet. Let me style this one. Oh, in the final version, maybe you can see. For example, if you zoom a little bit, you can see now we have 2 divs on the first line and 1 div in the next one. If you zoom more, you see they are on top of each other. So this is the flex wrap. So this is going to automatically make this one responsive for us. So in a different size, we see them on top of each other or next to each other. So let's install the div. We can target them simply using this technique. So we just say details, and we want to target all the divs here. So we're going to add this sign, great sign, greater than sign, and then we just say div. This is going to target all the divs inside this details. And then we're going to have a padding of 20 pixels. So which is going to add some padding inside the div. So now we can see them differently. And let's change their background color so you can see the changes better. So the changes, the background color is F1, which is kind of similar to the background color we have for the website. And then also we want to add a space between them, which we can achieve with changing the margin to 10 pixels. As you can see, this one didn't just go to the end space. We can just change the flex to 1, which is going to use the remaining available space for the div. So now they came to next to each other. If you zoom it, you see that these 2 are next to each other. They have the space. They fill up the space. And also this one is filling the space too. This is kind of nice design. Okay. So this is the flex 1. This is going to use the remaining available space for each div. And then we're going to add some border radius 5 pixels, which is going to add some rounded corner for them. And then we can just use text align center. So we bring the text inside them exactly in the center. And finally, we can set some min height. I want to just set the min height to be 45 pixels. So at least they're kind of be in the same position, especially when we have a bigger screen, they have the same size for the height. And so after that, we're going to center everything inside. I think that is not necessary for them because they are already in the center. Okay, looks fine. Now we want to just the things we want to do. We want to just add some styling for example, this. I think that is fine for everything that we have done. It's completely okay. Now we want to add some other things like media query. We want to bring these inputs on top of each other in the mobile size. So now we can just target them. We just want to change the size. We just write down media here. We just say for the sizes less than 768 pixels. We just say max width of 768 pixels. Do the following. So now this is for the mobile size. So max width, not max width. Okay. Now we want to target the form first. We just say change the flex direction instead of row to column. So bring them on top of each other if the size is less than 768 pixels. So after that, they're going to be next to each other like this. But they're not actually in a good position. We're going to change the other things as well. For example, I want this input to cover all the page. So we can target that input using form, the input with the type of text. And this one should be equal. And we're going to set the width to be 100%. So this is going to come here. And also I want to have some margin at the bottom of 10 pixels. So we're going to have some space between them this way too. So now after this size, we're going to see them next to each other. Okay. This is the way you can make a responsive website using media query. The Flexbox actually helps you to make a responsive website like this one too. So let's check everything. So everything looks okay. So that was it for creating the CSS file and styling the project. In the next section, we're going to add the functionality. So for example, we can just write down the name of the city, get the weather, show it here, we get the dynamic result, and we're going to fill these things using JavaScript. So see you in the next section for the JavaScript part of the project. All right, in the last section, we have completed the CSS part of the project. In this section, we're going to work on the functionality and create the JavaScript file of the project. The first thing we need to do is to create a JavaScript file inside the Visual Studio Code. We can open the Explorer section using Ctrl-Shift-E, and here we can create a new file and we can call it index or script.js. Before using the JavaScript file, we need to add a link to this file inside the HTML file. So just before the end of the body section, we need to add it because we need the website to be loaded first in the browser, and then we can add functionality to it, because otherwise we cannot read the elements inside the JavaScript. So we need to here add a script tag. Here you can see script tag with the src. And for the source, as both files are located at the same directory, we just need to have index.js for the src. This is going to add the JavaScript file here and read that file. So now we can just start creating the JavaScript file. As we are using the OpenWeather API, we need to first get our API key from the OpenWeather Map API. So we need to go to their website, register, and get our API key. It is totally free for the developers, and they give you some free tiers. So the things you need to do is to go to weather open weather, we just search open weather map, and in the search results, we need to go to openweathermap.org, current weather and forecast, open weather map, and then you can check their API here. So we just accept their cookie. And then here you need to sign in with your Gmail or any email account. You need to make an account. If you don't have an account, you need to create it. Otherwise, you can just sign in with your account. Let me quickly sign in with my account. As you can see, I have signed in with my account. So here you can click on this arrow icon and just click to see your API keys. Here you click on the My API Keys. And then here you can see your API keys. I have already created some API key for myself before. But if you want to create a new one, you just put the name of the API key. For example, you just say weather app or weather or whatever. You just write down something and generate it. And this is going to generate you a new API key. You need to activate it, but you have to wait a few minutes until this one gets activated. So if you just now use it, probably doesn't work. So you need to wait at least, I think, half an hour and then test your application. So I'm going to use one of my old API keys. So I'm sure they're working now. So I'm going to copy this one, come back to Visual Studio Code, and here I'm going to create a new constant called API key. I just equal it to and put it inside the set of code and put it here. Now we can use it in our application. So we need to get some of the elements inside the HTML, including this weather data. We need to manipulate all the information here and substitute it with the one that we have. We're going to create and get from the API. So I'm going to bring this one, the weather data. So let's first bring this element here. As we know the ID, it's very simple. We just want to put a name for it. We just call it weather. It should be camel case, weather data. We can just say weather data element. And this is going to be equal to document. We're going to target all the document. And we can use the method called getElementById. And here we're going to add the ID that we have, which is weather data. Now we have access to this element and we got it and brought it inside the JavaScript. The next element that we need is that input, this input. We want to have the data inside this input, city input, because we want to get the information inside the input, and based on this information, we're going to request for the API. For example, if the city is London, we're going to request for London. So let's copy this ID as well, and we bring it here. So I'm going to call this city input element, and this is going to be equal to document. This is very similar. The document dot get element by ID, and the ID is going to be city input. All right, so now we have the weather data element, the city input element. The next things we need to have is this form, because we want to add an event listener to this form. So anytime we submit the form, we want to trigger a function. We want to trigger a function which is going to get the data from the API. So the form doesn't have any ID or class. We can directly target that one using a method called query selector. So we're just going to create another constant. We call it form element. And this is going to be equal to document, because we want to target all the document inside the browser. And then we can use the method called query selector. And the query we want to select is the form. So we need to add a quote, and we just say form. Okay, now we have the things we need. The first things we need to do is to add the event listener to this form. So we're going to trigger a function based on that. So it's very simple. We need to add a method called add event listener, which is going to be trigger, or it's going to trigger a function when the form is submitted. So I'm going to show you how to do it. So first we need to target that form element, and then we just add event listener. And this one, the event we want to listen is submit. So we just write down submit here. And when the submit happens, we want to trigger a function. So we're going to create an arrow function here. And this function is going to get the event. Event, what is event? Whatever inside the form submission happened, we get the data here using this event. For example, all the inputs, for example, this input, we can get the value of this input, whatever you write down here using, for example, event, event dot, it comes with the information, for example, but if for example, event comes from the inputs, you can get the value. The things you get from here is for example, you can use for preventing the submission. So when you submit the form here, for example, when you submit the form, you can see the page is refreshing. This is the default behavior of the form. It's gonna refresh the page, but we don't want the page to be refreshed. So we can prevent this one easily using event dot prevent default. So we're gonna use this method. Now, when we submit, you see there is no refresh in the page. So now what we want to do is to get the information inside this form. As I mentioned before, we can just get it. We have the input element. We can target its value and get that one. So we create a constant. We call it, for example, city value. And this is going to be equal to the city input element that we got. And we're going to target its value. Okay. So we got this value. Let me show you inside the console log. So we're going to console log the city value. So now, for example, if I go to the website, I open the console using F12. And here you just go to console. And for example, whatever I write down here, for example, I just say London. When I click on get weather, you see the London is logging, is being logged inside the console. Whatever I write down, it's going to be there. So we have access to the information of the input. Now we can use this input, this city value, we pass it to a function, and then from the function, we're going to fetch the data from the API. So I'm going to call a function here, and I'm going to call it, for example, get weather data, and going to pass this city value. So I'm going to, but we need to create this function because this function is not existed yet. So we create a function called get weather data, which is going to get this city value, which is coming from here. And then this is going to do some things for us. For example, we can get the information from the API or etc. So for fetching from the API, the best way to do it is to use a try and catch method. Try and catch method actually asks the information from the API. If the request is correct, it's going to get the data. If the data doesn't come in any situation, we can understand it by catching the error. That's why we use try and catch. So we can just write down try catch, a statement. We get the suggestion. This is going to try to get the data from the API, and then we catch the error if possible error happens. For example, the API is not working, or the city we write down does not exist. So we can easily understand it by catching the error. Now we want to create a request to the Open Weather API to get the weather data for example, a specific city. So what we do here is to create a constant, and we're just going to call it response. And this is going to be fetch the data from the API, but as we need to wait the result comes, and then we go to the next line. So we're going to use await here. What await does, it's going to wait until the response comes and then goes to the next line, and doesn't prevent the code to read the next line. So, and then we're going to use a fetch method, and we're going to use backtake here. Backtake is the one that is located on the top of the tab key on Windows. And we're going to create this API request, because this is going to be dynamic based on the city, we need to have a backtick to write down a dynamic URL. So we're going to write down the URL, which is https clone to /API dot openweathermap.org. So it's going to say openweathermap.org. And then we're going to add /. This is going to, you have to be careful for the URL. If you make a mistake, you're going to get an error. So data / 2.5, which is the version of the API. And then we're just going to say weather. And then we add a question mark because we want to add the query. The query is going to be Q, and the Q is going to be the city. So you need to add a $sign because we want to have a variable here. And the variable we want to use is city value. So we add the city value here. So the query each time it would be different. For example, London, Sydney, or any city you search. So you're going to put it inside the queue now. And then after that, we need to pass the API ID, which is we got from here. So you need to add a $and sign. The first one, you need a question mark. After that, any parameter you add to the URL should start with the and sign. And then you just say API ID, app ID equal. And then you're going to add another variable using $sign instead of curly braces. And this one is going to be API key. And finally, we can just say they use the units. For example, another and then for the units, I want to use metric. Metric is going to give you the centigrade instead of Fahrenheit. So now this is completed. As we are using await, and await, I said the reason is because we are fetching data, we need to wait for the response come and then go to the next line. As we are using as await, we cannot use a normal function. We need to use a synchronous function. So you need to just say a sync function. So this is going to work. A synchronous function is a function that has some delay in some lines using await. So after getting the response, first we check if the response is okay, or you can say like that, if the response is not okay. The meaning of okay means if the response brings back the not error, any error, for example, 404 error. If we check the response from the API is not okay, if it's not okay, we're going to throw an error. Throw a new error. Error is a function from the JavaScript. And then this is going to be network response was not okay. So we're going to pass this error. So if the response is not okay, we're going to send this error. This is going to show inside your console. And then this is the format it comes, the response. We want to parse this one to JSON that we can use it. This is not a usable information. We need to parse this one from the API as a JSON. So what we do here is we create another constant and we call it data. And this is going to be equal to await because we need to wait until the response converted to JSON. So we just say response.json. And we need to pass a parenthesis to call this function, call this method. So this is going to convert the response to data. Now we can just get the data and show it. For example, I can now console log data. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code and we are in the console. Let's refresh the page. Now we just write down London plus get weather. As you can see, we got the data, which includes, as you can see, first the code is 200. It means that the response is okay. 200 means okay. 404 is an error. Okay, this is kind of basic. Slowly you understand what is error, what is okay. As you can see, the city name is London. And now we have some information here, which we can get from inside this weather. And the weather, inside the weather, we're going to get the description, which is overcast clouds. We get the icon. If you remember, the icon was sun before, but this one can be cloudy or anything else. The main is clouds. And also we have the wind information, the speed, the degree, and we can use this information to fill out this here. For example, we can get the centigrades. Let me find the centigrade. So the centigrade or the temperature is going to be inside the data here main, and here you can see the temperature, which is 5.662 centigrade. So if you try for a different city, for example, I try Sydney, this is going to give you another data with a different, for example, the Sydney weather is different now. It's a broken clouds, and this is the icon that is giving us. And also for the temperature is 23 centigrades. The max and mean we can get, the pressure, humidity, and 66% feels like 24. So all this information that we need to fill our website, it's available inside the response. So now I want to show you how to replace these things with this information. So we can simply fill them. So we got the data here. Now the time is to fill our website with this one. For example, we create a constant. We call it temperature, for example. And this is going to be equal to data.main. As I show you, it was inside the main, and .temp. But this is like a 26 point something, but I don't want this format. We can make it rounded using a math here. We just use the round method, and we put this one inside this. And this is going to, for example, if it's 22.1, it's going to be 22. Okay. So after the temperature, I think I made a mistake for the temperature. This is A here. Temperature. Okay. And after that, we're going to have the description. So we just write down description. It can be anything. This is just a name. Description. This is going to be equal to data we get, and this is inside the weather. It's inside the first array because it's an array. We need to target the first one. We want this one information. This is inside the description. And finally, we're going to get the icon, which is going to be data. This is similar data.weather, first element of the array, and then this is going to be icon. So, and then we're going to have the details. For example, what feels like, the humidity, and the wind speed. So we're going to create another constant, but this constant is going to be an array. So we create a constant and we call it details, and this is going to be equal to an array, and this array is going to be dynamic. So I'm going to add some backtick here, and then we just say feels like, and this is going to be equal to a $, because we want to add a variable here, and we get the data feels like. I can copy this one, and then I want to make it rounded too, because this is a kind of temperature too, but instead of temp, we're going to get the feels underline like. Okay. After that, the next element of this array is going to be humidity. So we add the backtick, we just say humidity, which is going to be equal to, I think we can get this one here. We put in the $, curly braces, and this is going to be data main, and it's inside the humidity. Okay. And the last element is going to be, let me copy this one. The last element is going to be the wind speed, which is going to be data.main, it's not main, data.wind dot speed. So I have shown you how to see this data, and we know which one is which one. So now we have temperature, description, icon, and details. Now we can fill our website with this information. So we need to target that weather data element, which is here. This weather data element has many things inside it. It has, for example, the icon. We can target this with the class of icon, and then we replace it with this image, and then we can just target the temperature, replace this one, target this one, and then finally we target these details and then fill it with these details that we have here. So what we do here, we just target that weather data element, and then we can use the query selector to target that class here. For example, if we want to target this class, this icon, we can simply just say dot query selector, and here we're going to select that one using dot. Because this is a class, we need to add a dot, and we just say icon. This is going to get that element. Now we want to substitute the inside with an image tag. We can use a method called inner HTML. So this is going to change the HTML inside this element, and this is going to be equal to, because this is dynamic, we need to add a backtick, and we just create that image. So we can simply copy this image tag here and put it here, and that's just change it. So we have the image tag, which has the source HTTP openweathermap.org/image WN, but this is going to be dynamic 01D. So instead of 01D, we're gonna add a $sign instead of curly braces, and this is going to be the icon that we get here, this icon. So I'm gonna copy this one, put it here, and the alternative is okay. So now maybe we can see the result now. So the icon is now sun. Let's change this one to London, and we get the weather, and now the icon is cloud. Okay, you see the icon is dynamic now. Let's try another city, for example, with search for something easy like Paris. So as you can see, the Paris is now night and sunny. All right, now it's moon actually, I don't know. Okay, so we have created this image tag dynamic. The next things we want to do is the temperature. That is very similar things we need to do. We can just copy this one, weather element.query, and instead of this icon, we just have to say temperature. And when we get this element, now we want to change the text inside. Instead of saying inner HTML, we can just say text content, because we want to change the content of this. We just say text content, and this is going to be equal to that temperature. We make it dynamic. We create a variable here, which is going to be this temperature. We're going to copy this one, put it here. So the temperature, but at the end, we want to add this centigrade. So we can copy this centigrade here. So now we have the temperature centigrade. So let's see what we get. For example, London is going to be cloudy. So let's try again. Let's refresh the page. London, get the weather. Okay, there's some problem here. I think, so we got this one, weather data.query selector. We didn't close this here. Okay, now we try again. London, cloudy and 6 degrees centigrade. Okay, it's working. Let's continue and fill other parts, which is this description first. So for the description, it's very similar. Let's copy this one, and the query selector we want to target is description. So I'm going to copy this description word here. So you know that we're targeting here, and then this description, temperature, and etc. And we're going to change its text content. So that text content is going to be equal to the description. So now if we search again for London, this is going to show us the description as well. And the final things we want to do is to completely get and replace all these three. So this is a little bit different because we have an array we want to substitute. We need to map through this array and add it one by one. The first procedure is similar. We need to use the query selector and target the details. And then here we want to change its inner HTML with this detail, but we want to one by one put this information inside a div. As you can see from the HTML, each of them is inside a div. So we're going to we want to loop through that details using the map method, which is going to give us each detail, each element. So we're going to get each element, and this is going to be equal to, we create a backtick, and this is going to be a div. So let me copy here. So first I just copy one of these div and put it here. And then instead of just saying feels like 23, we're gonna fill this one with this detail that we get. This detail, each detail we get. So now we get each detail and we put it inside the inner HTML. So let's try this. We just say London, get, as you can see, we got it, but as you can see, we have some problem here, like a comma. Because we have added that one, we need to join them too. We need to join them because this is just a separate and added by comma. So after this, after creating this, mapping through that, we can join this tree by just nothing in between them. Because they were joined by the comma, we can just join them with nothing. So now, if we test again, we just say Sydney and get the weather. As you can see, it works very well. Feels like 24, humidity is 67.5, and 3 point. But we don't see that actually. Okay, for the humidity here at the top, you just add the percentage here, so you can get the percentage. And for the wind, we can just add the space here, and then we just say meter per second. Okay, now probably it works better. So let's, for example, test London again. Okay, 73%, and then also we get the meter per second. So everything works well, but when we come to the website, we still see these hard-coded data. So we can simply get rid of them. We just go to the HTML file, everything inside this app, weather app, we can just get rid of them. But I want to keep it for your reference. So I just want to comment this one using Ctrl//. So now when we come to the website, it is completely empty. But if we search for a city, this is going to, okay, let's see. Oh, no, sorry. We shouldn't actually comment all of them. We comment the things inside. For example, this image, we can just delete these words. And actually, we can comment all these things inside. So I think this is going to work. So now we just say London and then get weather. So as you can see, we get the result correctly. But now there is another thing. So if, for example, if you write down something that doesn't exist, we don't get any results, but we don't know what happens here. For example, if we write down a name not correctly, for example, we just say London, doesn't gives you the result, but we don't know what happened. So anytime an error happened, we want to show them inside this here. As I mentioned here, we are using try and catch. We know that what an error happened. So instead of just showing the previous result, we can just replace them, and we just give a description saying that, for example, an error happened. Please try again. So in the error section, we're going to target that weather data element again. We're gonna first target all these things. So I'm gonna copy all of them. Actually, this is easier. So I'm gonna copy all these things, including icon, temperature, description, and everything here. So I'm gonna clean this one. In case of error, we don't want to show it an icon. So we're gonna just say, just make this one an empty string and no temperature. We just say empty string. Okay. Description, no description. And detail is going to be empty as well. Not empty. For the detail, we just want to say, so detail is okay, empty. But for the description, we're just going to say an error happened. We just say, please try again later. So now, instead of just getting for example, we search for London, we have the result. But if you, for example, you make a mistake of a name, you can see an error happened, please try again later. So that person who is using the website knows, oh, okay, there's something wrong and they're going to fix it. Okay. So even, for example, we just click for the empty, we don't get the result. But if you just write down a correct one, we get the result here. So that was it for this project. I hope you enjoyed and learned many things. We have worked how to fetch data from an open API, Open Weather API, and we have learned how to use try and catch to first get the data, and also we handle the errors using the catch here. And I hope you enjoyed and learned many things. See you in the next project.